Hey folks, thanks for joining. We will start in one more minute. Just get some of the recent folks I see dialing in and joining. So one more minute and then we will kick it off. All right, let's get this started. Thanks everyone for joining. This is a really exciting and important topic. A lot of us at Kenshoo have been talking about measurement, getting ready for a season in a couple months, and just couldn't be more happy to share some of the topics that we've been seeing coming up in real recent conversations, I'd say over the last 6 months or so, in terms of some of the strategies and movements we're seeing marketing teams taking. Want to just do a couple logistics to get this out of the way. For those of you attending, we will be sending out links to the recording and slides afterwards. I placed a couple poll questions. I'll see if I can remember to fire them up at the right points. These are all anonymous. They're just multiple choice things to get a quick readout from all of you folks attending. And so I might do that, again, all anonymous. And definitely feel free to submit questions in the GoToWebinar area. I will do my best to get as many as we can at the end of the presentation. And so that's for you also. My name is Tom Affinito. I've been at Kenshoo for 4 years now, working in product marketing, right now in corporate development, working with our large walled garden partners. So it's very exciting. We see a lot of innovative plans and innovative capabilities coming out. Before working at Kenshoo, I came from the data side. So I was with Axiom and LiveRamp. And so I'm bringing a little bit of the media activation we do at Kenshoo and a little bit of the data side, and I'll put both of those in this particular presentation. What I'm not going to cover is stuff that's also super important. So we have done presentations in the past looking at how you can custom tune your MTA, your allocation models for different cohorts and different tactics. I have talked about different URL scheme formats for different reporting that you might want to do at different times. And I really did not want to cover that today. One, not that it's not important, it's super important. But we can handle those outside of the webinar. If you are a Kenshoo client, our CS team is all over this stuff, and we're happy to work with you to get these optimized. If you're not a Kenshoo client, I'm sure there's other help you can get. I really wanted to shoot a little bit higher into something that I think is applicable for this quarter, but is really indicative of a larger change in the industry that is going to take a couple of years of market team reorganization, frankly, to work out. And so what I'd like to cover in this one is very important, just background for about 7 minutes or so on the marketing context, which is really driving different imperatives for reporting, different imperatives for alignment with business, and what our goal is as a marketer, with increasing data deficits that we're seeing for many reasons in the industry. Secondly, move to our approach, and really approach working with many of you into how we look at this, how do we look at data for personalization, data for measurement, what are some of the themes that we're seeing growing that seem to be working. And I will share adoption of those themes with some of our largest clients at the end of this presentation, just to validate that this stuff is really real. People are moving in alignment with these directions. It is not just like a new text ad format that you might use and you update your various components and 6 months later it changes again, et cetera. So the far more significant realignment of marketing with business and what marketing functions are. I want to be crisp on some ideas on how to get started with some of this if you're not as deeply enmeshed in it. And also just do a brief update and maybe sharing for the first time with some of you on what we're doing at Kenshoo from a product side. So talk with some of my product marketing friends, just give you a quick update where we are and we call the Navigator solutions. I might have one more thing at the end too, so we'll see how we're doing on time. Let me start with the first area, and I'll do this briefly, but it is so significant because when we get in conversations about what we call the innovation imperative for marketing, it's like, oh, it's just retail or it's just e-commerce. And we have, and I will say personally, been involved with a lot of our clients in automotive, clients in CPG, in fintech, and this is hitting everyone right now. So a couple fun stories just to define what I'm calling the innovation imperative here. You know, there was a great report from BMW shareholders meeting that happened in May. And by the way, I'm a dad. I have 2 teenage boys. And it just happens culturally here in California that every bit of news about any kind of automobile is at least what my kids love. And so if I didn't know this, I would have known it through my family because they're up on this every day. But Harold had a very interesting announcement in the shareholders meeting for BMW in May. And he said at this point, no one can reliably predict how quickly electromobility will progress and which drivetrain is going to prevail. Now, this is kind of like a yawn, like, what? It's not super exciting. Well, that comment basically 3 months later led to his resignation, and at least in part. And it is due to BMW owners ditching their cars to get Model 3s from Tesla. This is not new. The whole electrification of cars and self-driving is stuff that has been known research area for decades. It is a change, if you're not in automotive, it's a change that affects how cities are organized. It has that level of possible impact into car ownership and car subscription and what you are supporting on highways in terms of fuel. It is huge. And for Harold and a super smart guy who's been in the industry also for decades, to be disrupted, and the BMW is a 100-year-old company, and to be disrupted and to basically lose his job from a company that's less than 10 years old in terms of a public company is an example of how difficult it is to figure out how to address the consumer in a very dynamic, in a very agile way going forward. BMW has had tons of data on preferences of BMW owners across the world, and they still missed out on the significant messaging and the significant change in market that Tesla was offering them. Let's move from automotive into retail. Nothing, at least in the U.S., is more familiar for anchoring a mall than Nordstrom. But malls are earthquake zones, frankly, right now. We see left and right retailers getting hurt. What's Nordstrom doing about it? Nordstrom is opening new sets of stores that are small, that are not in malls, that are locally, local parking, local distance, within 10-mile distance, called Nordstrom local stores that have no inventory. What they have are clothes that you might have selected that you'd like to try on online through their app or through a Trunk Club subscription. So it's your inventory when you go in there, and that means there, instead of an hour experience to get to the mall to park and to find the anchor store and then to find a free person, within 5 minutes of parking, you should be able to be in the store and working with a stylist to make sure those clothes and recommendations of clothes are absolutely fitting. They're bringing that brand promise from a 1-hour distance to a 5-minute distance. and it's a phenomenal idea, complete change in capital expenditure for them, complete change in how they look at real estate and leasing areas in this kind of program. Huge disruption. Let's take someone in retail who's moving into e-commerce, Lululemon. Lululemon's been an incredible company, and they are now at 46% of their sales are going through online, through e-commerce channels, as opposed just through their brick and mortar. And how are they making that transformation? They're taking their transformation by not an extra 10 or 15% off this weekend only, and not even by differentiating tactics on the fibers that glow into their clothes versus some other competitors' makeup. They simply do that by advertising the experience. They invest in local regional experiences. They have what are called mavens that look regionally to create yoga experiences. These are pictures from the Sweat Life Festival they do over an entire weekend with over 1,000 classes in London each year. They have yoga programs, and they are taking these experiences through earned media as their primary form of advertising. You know, this is over in early June, actually towards the end of June, before the heat wave hit in Europe. They had the Sweat Life, and on Instagram alone, there were over 40,000 posts from people attending classes and sharing the experience and the lifestyle branding of Lululemon. And that has been incredibly successful in getting attention for them. Their goal is to even double their e-com rates within the next 3 years. Again, let's take over the top. Over the top is something many of us are looking at from a channel perspective, and we look at it as kind of another approach with smart TV, right? Let's take Netflix, Apple's joining the fray, we have Hulu, we have Amazon, HBO Go, tons of players now in OTT. It's an exciting channel for many of us in marketing. And where has the media been created, right? It has been like traditional TV, looking at, in many cases, an 18 to 35 sweet spot, because that's a demographic with money whose decisions are not as burned in as older demographics. Unfortunately, that's changing because the subscription models of over-the-top favor locking in people to subscriptions. Now, a lot of younger friends of mine will do things like subscribe to HBO for a month, get caught up and binge watch on Game of Thrones or another show, and then they'll move their $10 a month to another player. Younger folks are good at doing this, or you do that, or you don't have your macaroni and cheese in your dorm room, right, in college. So you're going to be really smart with money. But I will tell you, at least in my family and my parents and my older aunts and uncles, if I set them up with a subscription to one of these things, they are not changing it. And that's what brands want. That's what these OTT folks want. And there are folks scrambling right now. A lot of screenwriting in LA is now shifting, and I don't see Golden Girls returning as is, by the way. But there is going to be a lot of new content that's created to lock in older demographic, $10, $15 a month, and that's going to create older demo kind of advertising opportunities. Fascinating. Financial area. Boy, it looks like Pete's Coffee. It looks like it's a coffee store. It isn't. It's just a coffee cafe within the Capital One banking cafes. Lloyd's is doing this in England, and this is a way to bring millennials in who are not going into the brick and mortar stores. They're not looking at talking to bank tellers, and they are uncomfortable getting advice about stuff that they don't know about. They have adulting FOMO, I guess, is maybe one of the feelings. So the Capital One cafes, come in, get free Wi-Fi, have some nice coffee, and if you feel like talking to someone about investment or bank accounts, you can, but no one comes up to you. It's purely your choice. This is a great way that they're trying to engage customers, a completely opposite approach that's also disruptive. This is the UI from Wealthsimple. Wealthsimple is an investment app. It's all run by AI. There are no storefronts. There are no real people there unless you call the helpline and you need some basic help. It's all run algorithmically. In their first 2 years, they went from 0 to $1 billion of investment managed just through their software. Okay, 0 to $1 billion. in 2 years. That is an example of disruption. And probably my last one is just to do the shopping cart. There's so much to say with CPG, but there's a huge growth in retailers with their private labels. There are subscription models and product auto loads that are coming in, again, locking in the consumer so they're not even making a choice. This is yet another challenge. And so when you look across these, retail, e-com, fintech, automotive, et cetera, there is a common context. And that common context is what is going on, if you will, in the marketing that matters, and not the tactics, but the business strategy. These are marketing-led business transformations. These are new ways of defining relationships and interaction to power a business model. Think of Airbnb. Airbnb is not yet another website where you just go and lock in a date and purchase tickets. It is about the experience of travel. They've created a new business, a new market. And these businesses are transforming their marketing teams to enable these types of business transformations. There was lots of resistance to Tesla's early on, and still they have lots of operational problems in terms of service and delivery. And yet, by coming up with a supercharger network, by coming up with customization experiences, alongside the product, they got to market and reduce the objections many traditional automotive purchasers had. By the way, Tesla will also obsolete cars. So if you're looking for parts for the Roadster, they're not available, and that car's not 10 years old. No other auto provider is not servicing cars after 10 years. Think of a Honda Civic. I can get those decades after those are made. Tesla's treating the car as a software product that you throw away after 3, 4, 5 years and you upgrade, et cetera. Completely different model. And to transform the consumer to appreciate that has been an incredible strategic effort of marketing and its alignment to business. This should make us happy as marketers. This is an example of CX winning. Not the CX we started with 10 years ago where we're optimizing our internal processes, looking at the journey and smoothing out the rough edges in our support, but rather, again, customer experience creatively envisioned to create a new way of operating and interacting with brand that has not been seen before, that will create disruption in the vertical and in the market. CX is winning on all of these. The problem is, are you a disruptor and you want to keep that velocity, or are you fending off a disruptor, and how do you do that? And the ability to innovate or to defend against innovation is really hindered by accountability and effectiveness. And that typically is a quantifiable issue, which means it deals with data. And when we have marketing deficits due to that data, measurement deficits, we have some issues. These are top issues right now. This is from the Springtime CMO survey that Deloitte does every year. #1 C-suite challenge, demonstrating the impact of marketing. All right, let's look at another one here. How about how do companies prove impact of marketing? 2/3 of companies cannot reliably prove and get into these discussions with quantitative. We thought this was solved, right? We thought this was solved through attribution and take the web and cookies and MTA and enough Hadoop big data systems running and analysts, and everything will be figured out. And it just hasn't turned out that way. We see the rise of the walled gardens and data protections. We see ad blockers. We see legislation. And we see, frankly, a lot of skill needs that we need to grow a lot of the analytical teams to tie some of the missing data and to model it together. So the last nail in this coffin is really the tech that's coming out from some of the walled garden players themselves. Going back 2 years, I think we remember when Apple announced that Safari had their tracking protection, blocking the third-party cookies. By the way, Amazon has never had those, so nothing to remove there. Facebook last year removed third-party impression tracking, a lot of the videos. We've seen even this year, Safari go from 7 to 1 day for first-party blocking. The rumors of Chrome. I mean, if this happens on Chrome, let me show you this chart. This is a desktop browser market share, and the lower chart is our mobile browser market share. With Safari and Firefox off the table, if Chrome joins that too, we're looking at this picture in terms of our data. We're not looking at 100%, we're looking at 15%, 16% of the data that we would have had before. And the news, and these are some recent headlines, is not giving us hope that that trend is going to change, right? We're getting more ad blocking inside Chrome. Firefox is not only blocking, they're creating relationships with white and blacklisting companies on websites to go and do that. And Apple's now introduced another angle with social sign-in, where social sign-ins through iPhone and iPad and iOS have to support a new option, sign in with Apple, and that will allow you to anonymize if you want your email, and then to delete and make all messaging from the brand go away if you're annoyed by the brand. More control for the consumers. This is great for consumers, but for those of us trying to align our marketing to business, it's yet another piece of data that we would have used to make a measurement argument. So that's the context. Great. What are we doing about it, right? What can you do about it? Well, a couple things I want to share from conversations, and again, these would be in the last 6 months as we've been talking about these problems with clients. Let's take data on personalization. The one thing I would strongly recommend is looking at your purchase funnel. And this is one from Gartner. I just happen to like hexagons. That's why I have this one. You have your buy, own, advocate process here. And really looking at the journey and trying to get additional data, journey events, if you will, information requests, when someone's purchased, a product manual downloads, et cetera, and build up your own understanding of the customer, right, in a really helpful way. Because while you get in-market behaviors by the walled gardens, you get less understanding of how to optimize your brand with the consumer unless you're also effectively measuring those moments when the consumer is with you, right, and with your brand online and offline. So thinking cohesively about the journey and various events you can do to get data, important. And one of the angles on that also, that's trying to balance privacy and personalization, is what's called zero-party data. And this is an answer to, hey, should we all be kind of a surveillance state creation with what we're doing with marketing technology, or should we focus more not on the beacons and the pixel trackers that we get in first party, or the information that we can infer from third parties or we get from data companies, but should we just ask the consumer to do more? Or if not ask directly via survey, ask and learn by putting experiences in front of them that as they use the experience, they make preferences. And we record those direct preferences to learn about them. This is the promise of a zero-party data idea. I think it's really useful, especially going into holiday season. I'll come back to this. Again, little quote here. You can think of this as quirky questionnaires and polls, or really what I like, experiences that are made on the brand website or through the brand app itself. And seeing someone navigate through that gets you great information. By using the right mechanics and giving a value exchange, you will learn a lot of how the customer wants to be seen by you and wants to be interacted by you, and that is high quality information. I used to be an intern at a number of tech companies here in the Valley in the 90s. Scott McNeely, former CEO of Sun, was very well known, so just from my Scott admiration, had to put a Scott quote in here. Personalization and privacy can only coexist when there's transparency, and there's transparency on that data collection. And that really is what the zero-party approach is going to be about. I want to touch on that because I think that's significant. And I want to contrast that with data for quantifiable performance measurement. This brings up the language of incrementality. By incrementality, we're talking about the true measure of marketing, right? The measure due precisely to the influence of a campaign, a strategy, or tactic. As an example, if I click on the ad below, Is it incremental? So a number of rhetorical questions here. If I see the ad, is that ad incremental? I don't know if I just see the ad. If I click on the ad, is that ad considered to be significant? Is it incremental? Did it truly influence me? I still don't know. All right, so now I get to, what if I see the ad, I click on the ad, and then I purchase through seeing the ad? Is it incremental? And that's the trick question, because the answer is still no on that. The ad is only and should only be measured as incremental if I see it, click on it, purchase, and I would not have purchased otherwise. Many times I will take Airbnb as an example here, type in Airbnb, because I know I'm going to book something, and an ad result comes in one of my first search listings. I happen to click it as a navigational shortcut, and I happen to purchase. But if that ad had not been there, I was just going to take a little bit longer in my typing. I would have purchased anyway. So in that scenario, you can see the ad actions, but not incremental. I would have done it otherwise. So the fact that it's incremental is not merely shown by the clickstream in the data. You have to see incrementality by performing a marketing experiment. At Kenshoo, we work a lot with Gartner and Forrester, some of the leading tech analysts, and we shared our method, and Gartner wrote this up in May on our approach to doing, if you will, scientific holdout tests, and I'm going to explain this method to you for doing incrementality measurement. So, very first part is looking at hypothesis, something you're curious about, a new ad format, a new channel. Does Pinterest make sense for you? Should you use carousel ads? Are your brand keyword campaigns cannibalizing your SEO? Should you continue to invest in them or not? You've got to align on your hypothesis and the business objectives. And it's important that this be framed not in terms of a marketing metric, CPC values, and click-through rates. We want this to be impactful, remember, to the C-suite. So you want to look at what's important to the business. Let's talk about revenue, right? Are we influencing growth and revenue through this? Or, of course, growth could be onboarding of folks. And here's what let me take that in terms of significant onboarding or engagement event. If someone clicks on an ad, they go to a landing page, are they really engaged? Have they been onboarding? Of course not. Okay, let's say they click on an ad, they go to a landing page, they create an account with us. Well, a lot of our clients, we've challenged stopping there. And we said, wait, they may create an account just for fun and they forget about it, they never use it. All right, let's think about what onboarding really means. If a lead comes in and then they're so engaged they want to create an account, and then they use your system for 2 weeks, or they create 3 orders, or they do whatever. They're really engaged, and if you lost them, that would be considered churn. Let's measure that. Let's get how many people are doing that over a period of time and do a method around it. So the point here is plan and get real on what really matters, and that would actually convince people who are not in the marketing org that your tactic makes sense or has the right results. Then you've got to set up the test and holdout groups. And what do we mean? Look, it's just like science class. We have to have part of a population in one area, and we're going to give them the tactic, and we're going to have a population geographically separated so that we can repeat and validate this test. Geographic separation to keep the signals separate. And we have a lot more control than if we rely on internal walled garden customer segmentation, because the customer segments we get already have biases on these. They don't represent the behavior of the audience as a whole. And there are issues on confidence limits and repeatability if you're not working for Facebook or working for Google. If you are, and you're inside the walled gardens, there are all sorts of audience strategies you can do, and there are things called ghost ads that they do to run marketplace auctions invisibly to segment these. For most of us on the outside, we can't do that. Geographic holdouts are awesome. So if you have different audiences and they have different audience behaviors, and again, noting I have 2 boys, they love cars and science fiction, so we have some Doctor Who audiences here. I want to make sure I'm doing my experiment not across, to geek out here, Daleks and Cybermen. I want my audience that is geographically separated to have similar behavior. I want them to all act the same way to brand, so that as the behaviors differ during the experiment, I can get a validity and a real measure of change. So increased transparency, and I'll tell you this last point in terms of the halo effect. I can control geo in almost every new digital channel, an existing digital channel. I can do geographic holdouts. I can control my radio and out-of-home campaigns with geo. I can control TV and other legacy media, even newspapers, by geo. So by doing geographic-based controls, we're going to let every other marketing tactic that we're not testing run, and so our test will be in the context of how this new tactic plays with everything else our marketing team is doing to really judge its impactfulness. This is understanding how your marketing works with the halo of other advertising or the competitive environment. It's the best way to do this. So, step number 3, look at splitting your two groups that have the same brand behavior, the same kind of revenue cohorts to your brand. Maybe you're going to split 50-50. Maybe you're worried about losing revenue. You're worried about losing revenue during this testing period, which could be a number of weeks, to run a test and get accurate measurement of behavior and influence. Maybe you're worried about losing revenue because the new tactic you believe is going to be super successful. And of course, you're not running that new tactic on the holdout group because you're trying to measure the lift that you're getting through your new tactic. Okay, we get it. You need to do that for purity of signal. But what if you want to minimize the potential revenue loss? Well, then you use the middle picture here. You don't split 50-50. You split the holdout group to maybe be 80-20 on the holdout group, or 90-10, just as this in terms of data volume. The test might have to run more, but you're putting less revenue at risk by minimizing your holdout size. That's fine. You just might need to run it a little bit longer to get enough data sufficiency to come up with an answer there. And you may also need to maybe you have a local competitor who's doing something during the test period. You have to be able to go in and exclude the data that came from that region, et cetera. So there's executing and monitoring for all those issues. You then analyze and measure. We have ways of doing very similar ROAS measurement. You're just doing it with regard to the incremental numbers. You may also be correlating secondary metrics and seeing how the secondary metrics, perhaps cannibalization, is changing or not during the test. This is very common. Often we have 3 or 4 secondary KPIs we monitor with clients when they're running a primary incrementality test. And then the last part is actually doing something about it. Either you were not surprised by our hypothesis and then you can continue, or you got a surprise, either a positive or a negative surprise. This may cause you to update your daily bid levels, update your attribution levels in some media mix modeling software, change how you allocate media spend levels from customer lifetime value bucket. That will need to be updated, et cetera. It's 5 simple steps that have mathiness and data analysis to do them correctly, but this is achievable by everyone. I'll say Kenshoo, we've done this as service engagements with a lot of you or with a lot of our clients. We've even bundled the majority of the math, perhaps 99% of the math, into a standalone product I'll talk about at the end, just to give you updates on what we're doing to accelerate the ability to get these kinds of scientific answers. So what are some approaches for getting started? 3 things that I thought of. One is going back to the zero data and piloting it. I'll tell you why I think that's important and a great opportunity strategically this season. 2, kick off an incrementality test. Do it. Run those steps 1 through 5. And then as a very, very last one, and these are not levels of difficulty. You can do either of these. Boy, I would love, and this is a trend I'm beginning to see, and I really just want to share it, really coming up with a metric store, a metric storage solution, a unified storage on marketing metrics, and I'll tell you why at that. So let me hit these. quickly, because it's not the focus of this talk, but it is, again, key parts of data, whether I'm using it for measurement or I'm using it for personalization. This is a great time. There's no new information on this. It's just maybe a larger graphic here. And these are from the Weigh-In company where Scott McNeely is working now. During the shopping period, consumers, as you know, are in a heightened mindset. They are much more interested in not missing out in various categories of purchase. They are much more attentive to brand messaging, and they will interact more potentially than they would at other times of year, because their potential reward, as well as the risk of buying or purchasing bad things from their limited budget, both of those factors just bring this heightened tension. This is a great place to put experiences in front of a consumer that is not just answer a survey for no reason. That's not good, right? But to put preferences in pages as they work through an app. Would you like this page to be your default, right? And not through a question that blocks them. A little button at the top. Make this one a default, right? Oh, would you like this product filter to be a default? Do you want to see more news or less updates on a sidebar of an app or on a website? By having these questions in the forms of controls, you're in a sense getting an interaction survey and an interest survey without it being in the form of a survey. And more people will interact during Q4, potentially we've seen, than at other times of the year. So it's a great time for going for zero data. Number two, kick off a test. Start getting folks together and saying, this is a skill and a capability we want to do more of, to fight the data deficits, to learn more competitive information to help us be innovative and to stave off highly innovative competitors. We have to get closer to the customer. We have to know more if this messaging works. Last click on a lot of this stuff. It's great. It's reportable. We know we don't believe it. We know that's not a model of human psychology. So while it has existed, we need to up the game because the innovators are getting real data and making effective appeals. So you got to align on these. But let me tell you, there can be challenges. Q4, there's a lot going on. And so you got to bring priority to this. What is one test we can do if we've never done a test before? Start with one, not three. If you can't persuade folks, how about starting early on Q3 and learning something, or Q1? Now, Q4 is disruptive, and that's why I'd love for folks to be gutsy enough to do some Q4 testing, because it is non-continuous, really, with Q1 and Q3 for a lot of industries. However, that also means there's a heightened importance from business on revenue, on growth, and on success, and it may just be impossible to partition off a little area on the testing, even though it will be good to do. So if this is culturally new, that may be a tough conversation, and you may have to go to a Q3 or a Q1. Let me tell you, over the last 6 months, the tests that have come up with Kenshoo's clients, should I use a new channel? Should I get into Pinterest, for example? Or help me measure very upper funnel or very lower funnel tactics. Now, people want to measure everything. But upper funnel is kind of like a mystery land. So people would love to know, I want to understand this awareness impact, right? And lower funnel, we have tons of data. We just don't believe it because of last click. We know we're over-attributing. So getting your upper or lower funnels better correlated and calibrated has been a very high interest with a lot of our clients. Other ones you see here, doing video, looking at retargeting, social ads, display in various forms. We can do all of that. You can do all of it. Let me give one optimization when running these. It's possible to run one test, but to do stages of holdout, so you actually get multiple insights in the same time it would take to run one. Let me just do one very simple. I'll just walk you through. If I'm testing email and direct mail, if you look at the bottom of group 4, I'm going to have an audience group that I'm going to pull back on direct mail and email. I'm going to hold out on those. But then I have blended or partial holdouts on 2 and 3. So I'm going to hold out direct mail on 2. I'm going to hold out email on 3. And I'm going to have my normal marketing plan run on 1. Let's imagine that I do measurements and I calculate a revenue per recipient because I do one of these pure incrementality tests. That's not my answer. Okay, I can't rely on revenue per recipient. I have to take care of the cost, obviously, right? So let me give a cost column in here, and let's say direct mail is $1 and email's $1, or I'm sorry, direct mail's $1 and email's $0.01. Sorry, that was very expensive email. And so I have a cost per recipient, and then of course I subtract it. Now I have a more accurate revenue. Oh, that's still not right. And that's still not right because of group number 4. That group number 4 is telling us, with no marketing, with no advertising, with no extra influence in this manner, people are already going to get you $1.50 in revenue. And so you have to subtract that. And now you really can get a sense. Combined tactics, okay. Incremental return, $2.99. But look at the partial holdouts. I get an incremental return of $2.49 with email only and $2 on direct mail. There's not an answer, there's now a conversation. Would it simplify our marketing team to move away from direct mail? We do more with that, and there's clearly an incremental benefit to doing most, but is it worth that extra 50 cents? You know, could I be happy with $2.49 and team and media simplification? That's a great conversation to have. And how that works out is, of course, completely specific to your brand and your products and customer engagement. But that's what you can do in one test and get some really interesting conversations along with incremental values and what the ROAS numbers are, et cetera. Third area, I think, and this is independent of 1 or 2, you can do in Q4, start storing your decisions. Start storing your metrics and recording them for history. Why? And what do I mean for storing? The name of the metric, the value, when you measured it, how you measured it, right? What data, what campaigns, what was the scope of your measurement? You want to store this and bring in the BI team's information, your own marketing operational information, and make sure those are stored. I'm calling it a metric store. It's the same movement that's having many of us go to CDPs, customer data platforms. It's not just the CRM. It's not just the DMP or other identity signals that you may have. LiveRamp, a former company, as an example. Get that all in a CDP. That's great. You want to do the same on metrics and measurement. Why? So that you can review your decisions and understand which decisions were made from the right metrics and which decisions were bad, and you should change the metrics. And unless you record this, you'll never know. It's not all machine learning. Machine learning is great, but machine learning will only help us with the data we feed it. If you feed it not just raw data, but metrics, then the machine learning, going back to physics class, sorry, it's the most geeky slide here. We not only have the data, we have the derivative or the velocity, how often that metric is changing, and then the acceleration. How quickly and in what direction. That gets us to leading and lagging indicators. I'm going to leave it here before I geek out on math. But having machine learning create leading and lagging indicators of audience change is perhaps the most powerful goal we can have with automation of our marketing data. And you get that by adding layers on top of the data through things like a metric store. That will make your machine learning even more machine learning good, all right? So 3 powerful things that I think you can go and look at in Q4. I want to do a quick overview of where Kenshoo is working to help out in some of these areas. And then I think I have one more thing. So for those of you, and this is not a whole thing on Kenshoo, but those of you who may be Kenshoo clients or prospects or considering Kenshoo probably know about us from the bottom 2 bars of this picture. You know us because you know Kenshoo has a search product that's really good. And we do social and e-com, and we have blended social and search for local, and like Yellow Pages listing, and other folks getting into local like automotive tier 3, which I love, advertising, app installation advertising. You may know us because on top of that, we have an open data layer with all sorts of goodies that you do reporting on and come up with conclusions. but it's the green boxes on the side and on the top that have ones that we haven't been as public about that we've been internally building, and that's really it's very related to these problems because we're trying to actually help you solve a number of these. I'm not going through everything on there. Let me just tell you about this area of data intelligence, how we look at it from an engineering perspective. There's a lot that we do in terms of automation and automating through APIs, campaign changes, changing bids and budgets and scheduled reports and optimization performance curves to accelerate your stuff as a marketer, both rule-driven and ML-driven. Clearly, on top of that, we have a lot of modeling with AI that guides those, that tells you, oh, by the way, there's an ad fatigue alert. There's a popular product competitor baseline change that's going on you need to be aware of, et cetera. It's this upper area on top of those that's really new. And what we've been working on is the modeling of strategic questions as templates that then in turn create layers of AI and automation to get the answers. So we've been creating performance model templates for different industries, custom metric formulations that can be customized themselves, recipes, if you will, for custom metrics in different industries, outlier detection and smoothing. That's geeky. You're not buying us for that. It's just what we're building out. We use that layer to support a new suite of applications, only the first of which is currently available, and it's available in beta, and it's called Impact Navigator. And I share this with you because a lot of the math of audience correlation, of creating the geographic splits, of figuring out should it be 50-50 or 80-20, making sure you don't lose more revenue than a goal that you have, making sure it answers your questions on different channels. That's what this product does. This product is a SaaSification of our service methodology so that you can pump your raw, unattributed revenue engagement data in, and it will come up with test plans, it will monitor and report on the results. So it does all the kind of data science part for it. Again, wholly optional. We're super excited, and probably, and I'm looking at test results and bug reports. This has been in beta since June. Everything looks good. We'll be announcing GA of this product, general availability at the end of the month. So we've been super excited about this. You do not have to be a Kenshoo client to use this. It is a separate product. So if you're not using Kenshoo Search, if you're using another tool or another suite or something, this doesn't care about it, right? So we have our own ways of doing it independent of our activation applications. The second app that we're building now is one that we've already had. We've had for at least a year and a half, and it's called Budget Navigator. And it really looks at bid and budget, cross-channel, cross-campaign optimization by normalizing ROAS scores on different channels in different ways. So we're not going to get into the modeling of that, but that's what this product does. We are bulking it up to also get more strategic guardrails, if you will, kind of a lightweight MMM capability to it. And we'll be rolling this one out probably early next year to our clients. That will be our second Navigator app. We're also working on product advertising insight with product baselines and competitive intel, as well as audience cross-channel audience insights that we're seeing. I'm not going to talk more about those. We're developing those, but I don't want to, too early to share mock-ups of ideas of those yet. But that's where we are really going with this business decisioning layer that is using data intelligence. I share that. One, if you're a Kenshoo client, you might care about that. You might want to contact us, use Impact Navigator. We'd love to help you do that. You might want to be interested in getting on a new beta, a new alpha test on Budget Navigator via design partner. Fantastic. But even if you are not, this is significant because it marks a trend of a best-of-breed build-out. And this is the one last thing or one more thing I want to do inside here. And this is, and I added these last night as I was going through this presentation. And this, boy, is what I'm saying believable? Do you believe what I'm saying? That this is super important to do. And you really have to get started with your team, talk with your boss, talk with the stakeholders and peers. I'm going to share 4 stories I'm going to do to, if you will, make you believe that this is really important right now. Number 1, I got to meet a great guy at Netflix at a MarTech conference this springtime. I forget I think it was in April. And presentation was done by Michael, great guy. Notice his job title. He's a product manager on Netflix's internal experimentation platform. What does that look like? They have grown their analytic and BI team to have a new center of excellence outside of the typical prescriptive analytics. And that is coming up with business stakeholders, having data scientists come up with custom metrics that are tied to real audience behavior. Should sound familiar. And they have a custom suite and platform for creating experiments, running these both in channel with A/B testing, but then also with incrementality testing. They call it quasi-testing because they are able, because of their scale, to blend geo with audience in their holdouts. So they have a capability that most large clients do not have enough data or knowledge to run like Netflix can. Incredible. Example 1, okay? So that's inside the walled garden. Okay, example 2. Okay, Tom, that's these walled garden guys. What about an older marketing company? All right, let's take Clorox, all right? So we have a leader in CPG. What are they doing? They have a new learning process, read that as experimentation process, that they've been rolling out where they strategically use attributed data, not as measurement, but as idea generations for new ways and better ways to engage the customer. A lot of that is very zero-party data analysis, by the way. So what has this led them? Because of the standardization of marketing experiments they have rolled out through their marketing org, they have been able to increase by 8 times, almost a full order of magnitude, the number of marketing experiments they run. And they run many on a quarterly basis. As Doug has here, they've got enough. They're not hunches because they have real data from the consumer. It's not single channel. It's just real behavior. They've got enough volume now. They are getting significant wins on a quarterly basis because of the volume of experiments they're learning. Number 3, to try to convince you. How many experiments are we talking about here? 1, 5, 10? Well, here's an eMarketer from last fall. And you see a majority of companies, and I'd say these are kind of not the large leaders like Clorox and P&G and not the walled gardens, but just companies like you or me would be part of. 1 to 10 is kind of a sweet spot on the industry, but notice how many are hitting like 11 and into 50. That's a significant percentage. You're looking at 30%. Here's why I love this chart. It's what I didn't show you. Let me show you the bottom. Okay, 10% directly in-house, or around 14% through agency, are running between 51 and 500. This is just an optimization experiment. Okay, it's not personalization, it's not incremental. These are just optimization experiments. Look at that volume. Now, you may say it's only 10% of these crazy people, but you got to think about it. The leading companies in your vertical that you're working in, where do you think they are in this chart? Do you think they're in the lower part of the chart? Who do you think these 10% are? These 10% are not the laggards. These are the vertical leaders. They are the top 10%, and look where they are focusing effort in terms of this experience. Very last part. So here's Gartner survey, again, on marketers who are prioritizing experimentality and experiment support in their marketing team and those who don't. On the left, marketers that don't prioritize, where do they have great success and they're really helping to move the business? 1/3 of the time, self-reported. So that blue box is the good box. They're hitting it 1/3 of the time. Marketers who prioritize test and experimentation, almost nearly doubling that rate of success. This is a win. So when you experiment, you speed up your process and your agility because you now have a data-driven conversation as opposed to a hunch. Because you get data from a live experiment, there's nothing closer or faster to understanding the consumer with regard to being influenced or not by your messaging. And you will discover, by being able to do more experiments faster, nuggets you never would have thought of. And it's those nuggets that create new businesses and really help create disruptive threats. I'll share just one example in Airbnb's history. Airbnb discovered early on that good photography helped people go and book various locations. If the shots were well lit and you had a beautiful room, you're more likely to book that location wherever it is on the world. And so to help business for the Airbnb inventory, they started bringing professional photographers in to help them get better photos. That became its own business. That was so successful. So now are various programs where Airbnb people can get professional photographers, et cetera. That's not even Airbnb's business. It's a business they discovered as they did a test and an experiment, and they found, oh, wait, we understand our customers and what they want even more. They want assurance, right? They want to feel good and safe in these things. And it led to many insights. Amazon, a huge leader in this area across their verticals. So I cannot answer this question, but I hope rhetorically you believe this is if not the most significant trend in retooling and realigning business intelligence, marketing analytics, marketing operations from this and C-level to get us more closely connected. Here are the takeaways, just 3. Q4, do what you can. Get that alignment, try some of the getting started, prepare for even more missing data. What's your approach going to be for this? Where can you measure and calibrate a signal and get a reliable answer before you could have measured it directly? How do you get around that now? And look at experimentation as being foundational in this area. So that was a lot. I want to thank everyone. There's a couple things I'm going to see if I can call up some of the questions that were submitted. Holy Toledo, really good questions. Let me add. So I'm going to pick a geeky one here. One of the questions is, hey, some of this thinking is reminiscent of Bayesian statistics. Do we have to be math geeks to get this? Okay, so I'm not going to go into Bayesian counterfactuals and some of the measurement algorithms. I will share my knowledge here and what we're doing at Kenshoo. We are using Bayesian analysis along with machine learning for signal detection and smoothing as part of our algorithms to assure ourselves of the cleanness of the split, of the performance analysis and an audience correlation, like all the mathy parts, yeah, and a lot of those are served by our data intelligence layer that I talked about before. There's no reason that you can't begin with a small test and do some of this manually. Happy to engage with you if you guys need guidance, or if you have an interest in testing out Impact Navigator, which has a lot of this math baked in. So I'd love to do a follow-on where I can get into some of the math for the analyst folks, but an example there. This is all tractable, and in some ways it's a lot easier than what we'd have to do with MTA to get those correlations correct, or to model the missing data that's there also. Let me do one last quick one here, which is looking at a question on incrementality and changes that are going on. I guess it's another legislative question. So I can't. Yeah. So this is with regard to California consumer data privacy going on, and I will just make a very quick answer to this. None of the incremental measurement process that I went over that we do requires any invasive data. Does not require the attributed or channel data. It really is looking at what the brand can measure. Again, things like revenue for growth, things like onboarding engagement levels, loyalty responses, in terms of churn or other ways of influencing audience behavior, reaching out and growing. So the things that I talked about are things that are very much aligned with the creation and the evolvement of legislation that we're seeing that impacts us. I'm at hour, and unfortunately, not enough time for some other questions. Happy, you will get email from us. There's a survey in there. Love to know if this was hitting a useful level for you. I'm also happy to answer questions from folks afterwards via email. I'll do my best to get you a succinct answer. And folks, thanks so much for attending. I hope to do more of these. And let's all do our best incremental performance for Q4. So thanks so much and have a great day. Talk to you soon. Thank you.